Kamasi Washington, and I'm a musician or a saxophonist or a street fighter player. Yeah, that's something I liked when I was a little kid. I loved the Pink Panther, the cartoon, and then when I found out that there was a song that I could play, I really loved it. I started playing on the clarinet though, not on saxophone. Back then my dad, he wanted me to learn to play clarinet. I wanted to play the saxophone, but he was telling me that the saxophone and the clarinet were the same thing. So I thought my clarinet was kind of like a saxophone. My dad grew up in the 70s, and in the 70s, if you were a saxophone player, you needed to be a doubler. And so that meant you need to play saxophone, flute, and clarinet. And the saxophone is kind of the easiest and the coolest of the three. So he figured that once I went to the saxophone, I wouldn't want to go back to the clarinet. And he was right. I love The Simpsons. Homer was my favorite character, but remember he played the oboe-ma-bow and saxophone and tuba-ma-boo. I mean, it was just funny to me, but yeah, I remember the episode with Bleeding Gums Murphy and when when the other girl could play saxophone a little bit better than her. So yeah, The Simpsons were dope. West Coast hip hop, kind of gangster rap, was like the sound of my neighborhood, and it was like the first time that someone was making music in the mainstream about like the images I was seeing around me, So it was controversial, but it was cool to us because they were talking about our streets, When I got a little older, I started going to this area called Lamert Park, and in Lamert Park, you find people like Pharcyde and Freestyle Fellowship, and that was kind of like where the underground West Coast hip hop happened, and it was really integrated into jazz, and it kind of really shaped a lot about me. And then, so West Coast hip hop had a real influence on me because then, after high school, my first tour was with Snoop Dogg, so it was kind of always there for me. When I joined Snoop Dogg's band, most of the band, they were all jazz musicians. And then even people like Dr. Dre, you can tell he listened to a lot of jazz. He put jazz into the music. They really wanted jazz musicians because they wanted musicians that were loose. Sometimes Snoop would just start a song, create a song on stage, and we would have to just create a song with him on stage in front of 50,000 people. Or like one time we were hanging out backstage, and he had this Rick James song just playing in the background, but he was looping it. So it was a song called Bustin' Loose. And the song starts off with Rick James, he goes, "Well, all right, you squares." And then the trombone goes, so we don't think anything of it. We're just like backstage, smoking, drinking, having fun. And it's this song, it's just looping. No one said anything. And we go out on stage and Snoop, he just comes out on stage and he just says, "Well, all right, you squares." And nobody in the band knew what he was talking about. We were like, what does that mean? What does he mean? Is he upset? Is he upset about something? Did somebody do something square? And he turned around to us and he said, "Well, all right, you squares." And luckily, the trombone player got it. And he started playing it, and then the whole song just dropped in. But nobody talked about what key it was going to be in or what the arrangement was going to be. We just had to play the song right there. Now we couldn't wait. Well, the Whitney Museum asked me to create something. We started to get the reality that we might end up having Donald Trump as the president, and there started to become this kind of loud noise in the U.S. about this idea that somehow there was a problem with so many people from so many different places being in the U.S. And my whole idea is that it's not a problem at all. It's a gift. It's something we should be thankful for. And I think anyone that lives like a city like Paris that has so many different people, you look at it as like a beautiful thing. It's like you wouldn't want to change that. So what I set out to do was to create an experience that was a metaphor. And so what I did is I wrote a suite, a musical suite that had 5 different songs. And then the 6th part of the suite, we play all 5 songs at the same time. And then I asked my sister, who's a painter, to do the same thing. So she created 5 paintings. And then she created one big painting, the 6th painting, that combined those 5 paintings. And the 5 paintings were kind of like just shapes and colors. And when she put those colors and shapes together, it turned into a face. So the experience that I made at the Whitney Museum was that you come in a room and each piece of music was attached to a painting, and you kind of have an individual experience with the painting and the music. And then I had an amazing director named A.G. Rojas create a film, and then at the end of it, the film would turn on, and everyone would watch the film together and have a collective experience, and it was, you know, really cool. I just thought it was going to be for the Whitney Museum, but they definitely were able to kind of explain to me that it was something that was too important to leave just in the museum. And I was happy that they did talk me into like releasing that as an album and sharing it with the rest of the world. The way instrumental music kind of hits you is different than the way music with lyrics hits you, because when you hear lyrics, it's a very particular idea, and it's almost that you can agree with it or disagree with it, you know, but you can get a more clear point across with lyrics. With instrumental music, what you end up getting is you get a vibe, and you get a feel of who that person is. And it's almost like if you become my friend, who I am will kind of affect you. And so like when you really start to love an instrumental musician's music, like, so I was saying, like when you meet people who love John Coltrane's music, there's a kind of kindred spirit we all kind of have. And it changes you. You know, like I remember when I first started really listening to his music and really loving his music, it changed me and made me more open-minded. It made me have more empathy. I learned from John Coltrane himself, you know, in that sense, but not from his words, but from his music. I really do believe that music is spiritual, you know, and like even if you don't believe in spirits, doesn't mean you still have one. And it speaks to you on that level, and so it affects your spirit, and then your spirit will affect you, and you just look up and you realize, like, oh wow, I'm more open-minded than I used to be. I don't know why, but it's probably because of that. You know, we're in a good time period right now because so much music is so accessible to so many people, and so I have a hope that that music is going to kind of change a lot of people. I think that someone like Kendrick and you know, Childish Gambino as well, they are kind of dispelling these myths that, like, to make music that's going to be popular, it has to be in the box, has to be simple, it has to be like everything else. You know, you have to make the music, they call it mainstream, or they call it commercial. I never agreed with that. I always felt like the most amazing music and the most popular music and the records that we all really love were always out of the box. We're always different. We're always really unique. We're always one of a kind. And for some reason, you know, people have gotten to this belief that, like, you have to do things one way. And so, you know, Kendrick making an album like To Pimp a Butterfly that's like, that breaks all the rules of what's commercial or mainstream and becomes the biggest record in the world.
When shit hit the fan, is you still a fan? The coast of Mandela, hope my flow stay propelling. Let my word be your earth and moon, you consume it.
It proves that those ideas of what music needs to be popular weren't true, you know? And so it opens the door for other artists, and it opens the door for music, and it will shape people, you know, as people kind of start listening to music that makes you think. Then they'll start thinking, and independent thought is a very important necessity for societies, because I think that you can't trust people and to lead you. You have to think for yourself and find your own way. You know, I started playing Street Fighter when I was, you know, probably 12. And, you know, it was interesting. Back then, you know, we used to go to arcades and play video games. And they also be arcade games like in the 7-Eleven or like in the liquor store. And I just remember that, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, Street Fighter was like the way you connected with like Like in our neighborhood, we used to call them the OGs, because everybody would go play Street Fighter. And maybe you were a little kid and you weren't that big and tough on the streets, but on the Street Fighter, you know, I was the man. You know what I mean? I was the champion. You know.
Really?
Yeah. I think I might be the best in the world. Maybe Daigo Umihara can beat me, but maybe he can beat me. Ryu has been my classic character. That's been my character since I was a little kid. On Street Fighter 4, I kind of got into Blanca, and I went back to Ryu on Street Fighter 5. But I'm happy to see that Blanca is coming back in arcade edition. So as soon as I get home and I can really get into this new version of Street Fighter 5, beware, the beast is coming.
That day you stopped playing.
Yeah, he stopped playing Ryu. Yeah, he's playing Guile. Yeah. You know, everybody can't be like me and be loyal. You know, I'll show them a few things and they can, you know.
You know, and be humble.
Yeah. I'll be humble. I'll show them a few tricks. Maybe it'll bring him back to Ryu.
Bitch, be humble. Bitch, sit down. Be humble.
So when I was a kid, you know, in the South Central LA, there was a lot of pressure for young African American boys to kind of see themselves in a very negative way, I would say. You know, like you even though you're like a little kid and you never committed a crime or anything like that, and you don't really even know what it really means, you think you're a gangster, you know, and you want to be a gangster, and you aspire to be a gangster, even though you don't really know what that means, you know. So, you know, I went to the school and we all thought we were little gangsters, you know. I mean, that's what we thought we were going to be. And these guys that just took it upon themselves, they weren't teachers or anything like that. They just guys that lived in the community. They came to our school and kind of pulled us to the side and started this whole program called Ujima, where they met with us twice a week and they would take us to baseball games and they gave us books and they really just taught us a different version of our history and really kind of showed us the game, even though we were little kids, that like, you know, the reason why we saw these images of ourselves as being these things is because there was a desire for us to fail. And that if we had to kind of make a decision as to what we wanted to be, and do we want to be somebody that made their community better, or do we want to be somebody that tore our community down? And so, once they kind of explained that to us like that, it changed all of our perspectives, you know. And all of a sudden, we wanted to be something good. We want to build up our people, not tear our people down. And we never even thought of being a gangster as someone that tore people down, but we didn't realize that that is what we were trying to be. You know, so it really was an impactful thing, and it's something that I really believe in, that like, you know, it's not these big, you know, grand gestures that really change the world. It's the little small ones, like people making an impact in their neighborhood. And if more people made impacts in their neighborhoods, you really see the world really kind of change around. No, so it's just like this. Hit to here.